All right, I think we can go ahead and get started, and if people come in, at least there's a relatively quiet entrance. So, hi, my name's Elizabeth King. I'm an associate professor in the School of Public Health, and I'm the current director of the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies here at the University of Michigan. I want to thank you all for coming, and especially in this kind of dreary spring weather of Ann Arbor. I also want to thank the Department of Slavic Languages and Literatures and the Institute for Research on Women and Gender for co-sponsoring our event today. Kind of the plan for the evening with this book talk by Elena Kostyuchenko is we'll do a reading of an excerpt from the book, and then we'll have time for a little bit of conversation, and then we'll open it for Q&A from the audience as well. We have 2 microphones, one on each side of the room. I only ask that before you ask your question, if you can kind of briefly introduce yourself, with your name and affiliation. And then also, I think probably most people saw it, but the Literati is also selling copies of the English language book, I Love Russia, in the back of the room, and Elena has kindly offered to stay and do a book signing. Also will be in the back at the table that says, I don't know, it says Literati, I think. So, all right, so that's our plan of events. And right now, I'm extremely honored and very excited to introduce our guest for the evening. Elena Kostyuchenko is a Russian independent journalist. She was a special correspondent for Novaya Gazeta for 17 years until the newspaper shut down in March of 2022 due to pressure from the Russian government. Currently, Elena collaborates with the exiled independent Russian media network Meduza. She reports on armed conflicts, crime, human rights, and social issues, and was among the first journalists to document the presence of Russian troops in eastern Ukraine when she went to cover the Russian full-scale invasion in the first few days of that war. She has since had to remain out of Russia for her safety and well-being, and has survived a suspected poisoning attempt by Russian agents in Germany last year. Kostyuchenko has received multiple journalism awards, including the European Press Prize, the Free Media Award, and the Paul Khlebnikov Prize. Tonight, Elena Kostyuchenko will present her new book, I Love Russia, Reporting from a Lost Country. It was published in 2023 by Penguin Press in English, and the Russian version, Moya Lubimaya Strana, was published by Meduza in Riga, Latvia last year as well. Meduza also has made the Russian text available online and accessible for free and via VPN to reach Russian readers or readers in Russia, since her book is banned for sale in the country. Her book is a collection of reportage and personal essays from the past 15 years. I Love Russia is Kostyuchenko's unrelenting attempt to document her country as experienced by those whom it systematically and brutally erases. Please join me in giving a warmest welcome to Elena Kostyuchenko.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. We're gonna start with some readings, and I will read from chapter 13 in Russian. It's called "Война, как она прорастала и проросла." In English, it's "The War, How It Broke Through the Soil and Blossomed." Мне 5. Я в детсаду. Зима. Играем в войну. Большая снежная гора – это крепость. В ней фашисты. Мы ее штурмуем. Фашистов мало, ими никто не хочет быть. Но у них преимущество. Оборонять крепость удобнее. Снежки летят во все стороны. Все мальчишки – бойцы. Я тоже хочу быть бойцом, но мне разрешают только медсестрой. Потому что я девочка. Я выволакиваю с поля боя раненых. Раненые в снегу и смеются.
I am 5. I'm in preschool. It's winter. We're playing war. The big hill of snow is the fortress. It's full of Germans. We storm it. There aren't many. Nobody wants to be one of the fascists, but they have the tactical advantage. It's a lot easier defending a fortress. Snowballs are flying in every direction. All of the boys are fighters. I also wanted to be a fighter, but they only let me play nurse because I'm a girl. I drag the wounded off the battlefield. The wounded are covered in snow and laughing.
Мне 6. Мама рассказывает мне, что дед воевал, что однажды на нашу страну напали немцы-фашисты, и он защищал нашу страну. Он пошел на фронт сам, добровольно. Был артиллеристом, и я повторяю слово «артиллерист». Его ранило, но он вылечился и продолжил воевать. уже с японцами, потому что японцы помогали фашистам. Сама война называлась Великая Отечественная, потому что люди сражались за Отечество. А почему Великая? Потому что воевали почти все мужчины и многие женщины, говорит мама. А погибли 11 миллионов человек. 11 миллионов – это сколько? Мама шевелит губами, считает. Это как 16 Ярославлей. Представь, что в нашем городе не осталось живых. И еще в 15 городах не осталось живых. Ни одного человека. Всех убили. И я представляю мертвые города.
I am 6. Mama tells me that my grandfather fought in the war, that fascists attacked our country and he defended it. He volunteered to go to the front. He was in the artillery, I repeat. He got wounded, but then he got better and went back to fight more, this time with the Japanese. Because the Japanese were helping the fascists. The war was called the Great Patriotic War because people were fighting for our patrimony. Why was it great? Because almost all of the men and many of the women fought in it, Mama said. And 11 million people died. How much is 11 million? Mama moves her lips, calculating. It's like 16 Yaroslavls. Imagine that nobody in our city was left alive, and that no one was left alive in 15 more cities like ours. Not one single person, all of them killed. I imagine all the dead cities.
Мне 8. Сегодня День Победы. Мы идем к соседке тете Тоне. Она тоже воевала. Мы купили торт и красные гвоздики. Тетя Тоня в синем самодельном платье, на груди медаль. Она радуется нам и торту. Идет ко мне обниматься. Я не люблю тетю Тоню. Она плохо пахнет. Еще она глухая, и надо очень громко говорить и сильно шевелить губами, чтобы она тебя поняла. Еще у нее очень чистая квартира, все сияет, не пылинки. Я боюсь такой чистоты, она ненормальна. Тетя Тоня любит меня. Она спрашивает, как дела в школе. Плохо, но надо говорить, что хорошо. Мама разливает чай. Мы поднимаем чашки и чокаемся. Мама говорит: «За мир».
I'm 8. It's Victory Day. We're visiting our neighbor, Auntie Tonya. She fought in the war. We bought her a cake and red carnations. Auntie Tonya is wearing a blue homemade dress and a medal on her chest. She's happy to see us and our cake. She comes over to hug me. I don't like Auntie Tonya. She smells bad. She's also deaf, and you have to talk very loudly and move your mouth very big to get her to understand you. Also, her apartment is very clean. Everything's gleaming. There isn't a speck of dust. I'm afraid of it being this clean. It's not normal. Auntie Tonya loves me. She asks, how is school? It's bad, but you have to say that it's good. Mama pours the tea. We raise our cups and toast. Mama says, to peace.
Мне 10, я смотрю кино. Оно называется «В бой идут одни старики». В фильме «Храбрые летчики», очень красивые, бьются в небе с фашистами. Фильм черно-белый, и каждое лицо будто вылеплено светом. В эскадрилью посылают молодых ребят, но старики не пускают их в бой, чтобы сберечь. А ребята тоже хотят защищать родину. После боевых вылетов летчики собираются в оркестр и замечательно поют. Гибнут, но героически, красиво, в черном дыму. Один, умирая, кричит: «Будем жить». Есть любовь с красивыми летчицами. Когда летчицы гибнут, летчики идут к ним на могилу и обещают вернуться после войны, чтобы снова вместе спеть любимую песню. Я даже не думаю, я чувствую. Как же здорово, вот эта жизнь.
I'm 10. I'm watching a movie. It's called Only Old Men Are Going Into Battle. It's about courageous young fighter pilots. They're very handsome, fighting the fascists up in the sky. The movie is black and white, and every face in it seems to be sculpted from light. Some young men join an Air Force squadron, and the old hands don't want to let them into the fray. They want to protect them. But the boys are also eager to defend their motherland. And flying in battle, the pilots gather into a choir and sing beautiful songs. They die, but heroically, majestically, going up in clouds of black smoke. As he dies, one of them shouts, "We're going to live." There's romance, too, with the girl pilots. When the girl pilots die, the boy pilots visit their graves and promise to come back after the war so they can sing their favorite songs together again. I'm not even thinking, I'm all feeling, wow, this is so great, what a life.
Мне 11, и я спрашиваю маму, что дед рассказывал про войну. И она говорит: ничего, совсем ничего, совсем ничего. Однажды сказал, что они ели мертвых лошадей. Нет, он сказал павших лошадей. Была зима, и от коней отпиливали куски. И все, и все. А у него были награды? Были, но он их не носил. Он их отдал мне, я была маленькая, играла с ними, закапывала в песок. Все потеряла. Жалко, жалко. А как он умер? У него остановилось сердце. Бабушка позвала его ужинать, а он не идет. Он мертвый вот здесь сидел.
I am 11 and I ask Mama, what did Grandpa say about the war? She says nothing. Nothing at all? Nothing at all. One time he said that they ate dead horses. No, he said fallen horses. It was winter, so they had to pack pieces of meat off of the horses. And that's all he said? That's all he said. Did he have any medals? Yes, but he never wore them. He gave them to me. I was little, I played with them, I would bury them in the sand. I ended up losing them all. It's too bad, too bad. How did he die? His heart stopped. Babushka told him that dinner was ready, but he wasn't coming. He was sitting here dead right in that spot.
Мне 12, и я иду к тете Тоне. Она мне рада. Я говорю, тетя Тоня, расскажите про войну. Она говорит, я тебя не слышу. Тетя Тоня, расскажите про войну. Ничего не слышу, Леночка, совсем оглохла. Про войну, про страну. Страна хорошая была, СССР. Про войну. Я совсем не слышу тебя, аппарат, наверное, сломался. Тетя Тоня снимает слуховой аппарат и говорит, я устала, пойду прилягу. До свидания, Лена.
I am 12 and I go over to Auntie Tonia's. She is so happy to see me. I say, Auntie Tonia, tell me about the war. She says, I can't hear you. Auntie Tonia, tell me about the war. I can't hear anything, Lenichka. I must be totally deaf. About the war, about the USSR. It was a good country, the USSR. About the war. I can't hear at all. My hearing aid must be broken. Auntie Tonia takes out her hearing aid and she tells me I'm tired. I'll go lie down. Goodbye, Lena.
Мне 12, я иду в библиотеку. Я прошу книги про войну. Мне дают 5 книг, я читаю их все. Потом беру еще 5, потом еще. Война в книгах не такая веселая, как в фильмах, зато там больше героизма, и можно читать медленно, чтобы все почувствовать. В карельских лесах девушки-зенитчицы под командованием старшины Воскова останавливают фашистских диверсантов, пробирающихся к стратегическому каналу. Девушек всего 5, диверсантов 16. Все девушки гибнут. Одна, самая хорошая, умирая, говорит, Родина ведь не с каналов начинается, совсем не оттуда, а мы ее защищали. Сначала ее, а потом уж канал. Как же я плакала, и слезы были сладкие. Конечно, не с каналов, Родина моя любимая.
I'm 12 and I go to the library. I ask for books about the war. They hand me about 5 of them and I read them all. I take out 5 more, then 5 more after that. In the books, the war isn't as cheerful as it is in the movies, but there is more heroism, and you can read slowly so that you can really feel all of it. In the Karelian forests, under the command of Captain Voskov, the anti-aircraft gunner girls take down the fascist spies, breaking through toward the strategic canal. There are only 5 girls and 16 spies. All of the girls die. As she is dying, one of them, the very best one, says, "Our motherland doesn't even begin with these canals. This is not where it comes from at all, but we defended it. She came first, and then the canal." I cry so hard, my tears are so sweet. Of course, the canals aren't even the tip of it, my beloved motherland.
Мне 12, и я думаю, вот если будет опять война, нападут на нашу страну, и что тогда? Конечно, буду ее защищать. Стану, например, снайпером. Успеть бы вырасти. Буду убивать фашистов. Почему фашистов? Не знаю, в голове как-то только фашисты возникали. Возможно, погибну, совсем молодой погибну. И мама будет плакать, но очень мной гордиться. Такой тихой, темной, сдержанной гордостью. Со мной никто не дружил, кроме 2 девочек, и я думала, глядя на одноклассников. Потом будете рассказывать, что учились со мной в одном классе, вспоминать, какая я была. Смущало только, что я самая маленькая в классе, задохлик, совсем невыносливая. Ничего, снайперская винтовка не тяжелая.
I am 12 and I think to myself, what if there's another war? What if our country's attacked? Of course I'll defend it. I'll be like a sniper. If only I could hurry up and grow up. I'll kill all the fascists. Why fascists? I don't know. That's the only enemy that occurred to me, fascists. Maybe I'll die so young, and Mama will cry, but she'll be so proud of me. She'll have this quiet, dark, restrained pride. I have only 2 friends. When I look at my classmates, I think, later on you will tell everyone that we went to school together. You'll tell everyone what I was like. The only thing that gets in the way of this fantasy is that I'm the smallest girl in my class, the runt and a weakling. That's fine, I can carry a sniper rifle.
Мне 13, на нашей улице похороны. Убили молодого парня, вчерашнего школьника, призвали в армию, отправили в Чечню и убили. Спрашиваю у Лени соседа, кто убил? Чеченцы. Почему? В Чечне война. С кем? С террористами. Ого, думаю, террористов убивать круче, чем фашистов. Хотя нет, фашистов все-таки круче. Или террористов. Бедный парень, конечно. Он, конечно, герой. Но про войну Леня преувеличивает. По телевизору говорят, контртеррористическая операция. Была бы война, мы бы знали.
I am 13. There's a funeral on our street. A young man was killed. Only yesterday he was a schoolboy. They enlisted him, sent him to Chechnya, and he got killed. I asked our neighbor Lonya, who killed him? The Chechens. Why? Because there's a war there. With whom? With the terrorists. Wow, I think. Killing terrorists is even cooler than killing fascists. Although maybe not. Killing fascists is actually cooler. Or maybe terrorists. Poor guy, of course. He is, of course, a hero. But Leon is exaggerating about the war. On TV, they call it a counterterrorism operation. If there was really a war, we would know about it.
Мне 14, и я читаю статьи Анны Политковской про Чечню. Пиздец.
I am 14 and I'm reading an Anna Politkovskaya article about Chechnya. Holy fuck.
Мне 14, и я читаю книги Светланы Алексеевич. Пиздец.
I am 14 and I'm reading the books of Svetlana Alexievich. Holy shit.
Мне 17, я учусь на журфаке и сижу на игре по международному праву. На игру приехали команды с разных журфаков. Команда из Чечни, 2 девушки, Ася и Малика, серьезная, красивая. Я подхожу к ним после игры, приглашаю в гости. Мы идем в общежитие, я завариваю чай. Я очень хочу им понравиться. Говорю, давайте я вам покажу Москву. И тут за окном, как по заказу, вспыхивает салют. Салют, смотрите. Я смотрю на салют и говорю, а у нас в Москве часто салюты. Девочки молчат. Я оборачиваюсь, их нет. Где они? Они под столом.
I am 17 and I'm a student in the journalism department. I'm sitting on the sidelines of an international rights strategy game. Teams from various colleges' journalism departments have come to participate in the game. The team from Chechnya is 2 girls, Asya and Malika. They are so serious and beautiful. I go up to them after the game and invite them over. We go to my dorm room, I make them tea. I really want them to like me. I tell them, let me show you around Moscow. And just as I'm saying that, as if I'd planned it, fireworks start going off outside. Look, fireworks, look! I look out the window and say, here in Moscow we have fireworks all the time. The girls don't say anything, I turn around and they're gone. Where did they go? They're under the table.
Мне 20, Россия нападает на Грузию. Президент говорит, что это миротворческая акция, потому что Грузия сама напала на Южную Осетию и Абхазию. От Новой едут 3 корреспондента – Ольга Боброва, Аркадий Бабченко и Роман Анин. Особенно обидно про Анина, он всего на год старше меня, я бы тоже справилась. Но меня и еще 3 девчонок ставят на новостную ленту. Я должна проверять всю информацию и писать заметки. Еще я должна следить за передвижениями наших корреспондентов, принимать срочную информацию от них и рассказывать им про продвижение российских и грузинских войск. Я не расстаюсь с телефоном. Очень страшно пропустить входящий вызов. Очень страшно выбирать, какая информация важная и должна быть сообщена ребятам, а когда их лучше не тревожить. Вдруг из-за меня кого-то из них ранят или убьют. Я не сплю 3 ночи. На 4-й день все становится хрустальным и прозрачным. Ноги подволакиваются. Девчонки говорят, Лена, поспи, мы подежурим. Я ложусь на диван в редакции, накрываюсь ватником, телефон под щекой. Проваливаюсь в черноту. Меня трогают за плечо, я вскакиваю. Что? Ира говорит, война закончилась. Комната невидимо наполняется светом. Я больше никогда не смогу оставить мобильный даже на секунду. Мне страшно без него.
I'm 20. Russia attacks Georgia. The president says that this is a peacekeeping mission because Georgia's attacked South Ossetia and Abkhazia. 3 correspondents go down there from Novaya. Olga Bobrova, Arkady Babchenko, and Roman Anin. I'm especially jealous of Anin. He's only a year older than me. I could have gone too, but me and 3 other girls are assigned to the news feed instead. I need to verify all of the information and write up briefs. I also need to follow the movements of our correspondents, receive breaking news from them, and report to them on the movements of the Russian and Georgian troops. I never let go of my phone. It's very scary to miss an incoming call. It's very scary deciding which information is critical and needs to be shared with our people on the ground and what I shouldn't bother them with. What if one of them gets wounded because of me or killed? I can't sleep for 3 nights. On the 4th day, everything starts to look transparent and crystalline. My legs stop being able to support me. The girls say, Lena, go get some sleep. We'll keep watch. I lie down on the office couch, cover myself with the comforter, and lay my phone under my cheek. I black out. Somebody touches my shoulder and I jump up. What happened? Irina says, the war is over. An invisible light fills the room. I can never let go of my phone ever again. I'm scared without it.
Через сутки возвращается Бабченко. Он кричит на бухгалтера. Она просит у него чеки и билеты для отчета. Он говорит, иди-ка ты нахуй. Уходит к себе в кабинет. Я иду за ним. Он показывает фотографии обгоревших, безногих людей, людей без носов и глаз, людей, разбухших на солнце, как тесто, людей, пробитых пулями, живых, мертвых. Показывает царапину на голове и сквозную дырку в штанах, осколки. Потом его начинает вести как-то в сторону. «Ты что, пил?» «Нет, я не пил». Он наклоняется ко мне и спрашивает. «От меня пахнет трупами? Понюхай». «Что?» «Я чувствую, что от меня пахнет трупами. Ты чувствуешь?» «Я в машине с трупами ехал». «Нет». «Ты врешь, Лена». «Я не вру. Я сейчас». Я иду к заместителю главного редактора. Говорю, Бабченко нехорошо. Надо довести его до дома. «Да», говорит замглавного, «сейчас».
A day later, Babchenko returns. He screams at the accountant. She's asking him for receipts and tickets for the books. He says, go fuck yourself. Goes to his office. I follow him. He shows me photos of charred bodies, people without legs, without noses or eyes, people swollen out in the sun like bad dough, people perforated with bullets, dead and alive. He shows me a scrape on his head and a hole through his pants, shrapnel. Then he starts following over. What, are you drunk? No, I haven't had anything. He leans into me and he whispers, do I smell like dead bodies? Smell me. What? I feel like I smell like dead bodies. Can you smell them on me? I rode in a truck full of them. No, you're lying to me, Lena. I'm not. Just a minute. I go to the deputy director-in-chief. I say, Babchenko's not well. We need to get him home. Yes, says the editor, just a minute.
Мне 23, замглавного говорит, ты никогда не поедешь на войну, потому что ты девушка. Это работа для мужчин. Я думаю, ты охуел.
I'm 23 and the deputy editor-in-chief says, you'll never get sent to cover a war. You're a girl. It's a man's job. I think to myself, you're fucking crazy.
Мне 24. Я еду на революцию в Египте. Я вижу, как горят заживо люди, в которых попали коктейли Молотова. Я вижу, как брошенный камень отрывает уши, пальцы, пробивает головы. Потом начинают стрелять.
I'm 24. I traveled to Egypt to cover the revolution. I see people burning alive after being hit with Molotov cocktails. I see flying stones ripping off people's fingers and ears, breaking holes through their skulls. Then the shouting begins.
Мне 26. Начинается война на Донбассе. Донецкая и Луганская области Украины объявляют, что они теперь отдельные государства, ДНР и ЛНР. Украина начинает антитеррористическую операцию. Республики отвечают. Россия говорит, там нет ее солдат, Украина воюет собственными гражданами. Я ищу тела российских солдат, их прячут, и нахожу.
I'm 26 and the war in Donbass begins. The Donetsk and Luhansk regions in Ukraine announced that they are now independent republics, the DNR and the LNR. Ukraine begins its own anti-terrorist operation and the republics respond in kind. Russia says that it doesn't have any soldiers there, claiming Ukraine is fighting with its own citizens. I look for the bodies of Russian soldiers. They're being hidden. I find them.
Мне 27, я еду на Донбасс. Звоню маме из самолета. Раньше позвонить боялась. Я думала, мама будет плакать и кричать. Она говорит, я надеюсь, ты записала мои координаты и положила их в паспорт. Паспорт оберни в целлофан, носи его с собой, но не в сумке, а в одежде. Постарайся выходить на связь раз в день хотя бы по СМС. Пей воду, ищи тепло, держись больниц, избегай военных машин. Ты взяла антибиотики? Нужно раздобыть жгуты.
I'm 27. I go to Donbass. I call my mother from the plane. I was too scared to call her before. I thought that Mama was going to scream and cry. Instead, she says, have you written down my contact information in your passport? Cover your passport in plastic wrap and always carry it with you, but not in your purse, in your clothes. Try to get in touch with me at least once a day, even if it's only a text. Drink water, seek warmth, stick next to hospitals, avoid army vehicles. Did you bring any antibiotics? You need to get your hands on some tourniquets.
Я вижу войну. Ни в одной книге не писали, что война – это грязь. Тяжелая техника продавливает верхний слой земли, и из-под нее вылезает светло-коричневая жижа. Она покрывает все – людей, машины, дома, собак. очень много брошенных собак, очень много невыспавшихся людей с оружием. Я дважды попадаю под артобстрел. Я узнаю, что я умею бегать на четвереньках. Я бегу большими прыжками, как во сне. Мое тело гибкое и ловкое. Я не верю, что умру. Я ездила на Донбасс еще 2 раза. Я написала много текстов. Я не хочу их перечитывать.
I see war. Not a single one of the books I read told me that war means dirt. Heavy machinery breaks through the top layer of soil in light brown and rises up through the cracks. It covers everything: people, cars, buildings, dogs, so many abandoned dogs, so many sleepless people with weapons. I'm caught in the shelling twice. I learn that I can run all fours. I glide along in leaps, like in a dream. My body is agile and limber. I don't believe that I'm going to die. I went back to Donbass twice. I wrote many articles. I don't want to reread them.
Мне 31, я учусь на журфаке городского университета Нью-Йорка. Международную журналистику у нас преподает Алия Малик, красавица, сирийка, безупречная в мыслях и острая на язык. Я готовлюсь к ее семинарам больше, чем к остальным. Я очень хочу, чтобы она меня заметила, но мне нечем ее поразить. Я мало читаю и медленно думаю. Алия учит писать нас осторожно и честно. Алия учит нас внимательности и скромности. На последнее занятие она приносит лепешки с чабрецом и арабские сладости. Мы едим. Ребята по очереди ставят свои любимые песни. Я подхожу к Алие и говорю: я скоро возвращаюсь в Москву. Пожалуйста, приезжайте в гости. Алия бледнеет так, как будто в комнате сменили освещение. Она наклоняется близко и тихо говорит: я никогда не приеду в Москву. Ваши солдаты убивают моих родных людей.
I'm 31. I'm taking classes at the School of Journalism at the City University of New York. Aliyah Malik teaches us international journalism. She's Syrian, beautiful, untouchably smart, and sharp-witted. I spend more time doing work for her classes than for any others. I really want her to notice me, but I have nothing to impress her with. I don't read much and think very slowly. Aliyah teaches us to write carefully and honestly. Aliyah teaches us attentiveness and humility. For our last class, she brings us thyme pastries and Arab sweets. We eat them. People take turns putting on their favorite songs. I go up to Aliyah and say, I'm going back to Moscow soon. Please come and visit me. Aliyah's face goes so white, it looks like the light has changed in the room. She bends close to me and quietly says, I will never come to Moscow. Your soldiers are killing the people I love.
Мне 34. Мама болеет ковидом. Я приехала ее лечить. Мы сидим у телевизора и слушаем Путина. Путин говорит: Россия признает независимость ДНР и ЛНР. Сколько эта трагедия может продолжаться? Спрашивает он. Спасибо за внимание. Я иду курить и быстро покупаю стиральную машину. Думаю, хорошо, что успела закончить ремонт. Думаю, хуя и практичная, мерзко. Рублю пиздец, говорю маме. Мама спрашивает, что будет? Я говорю, ведут войска в Донецкую и Луганскую области, но теперь уже официально. Будет больше войны. Мама говорит, зато русских защитят. Там знаешь, сколько русских? Я говорю, мне нужно в Москву. Я имею в виду, я еду в Донецк. Мама говорит, возьми фотографию деда, отреставрируй ее, напечатай большую, хорошо? Хорошо. Я кладу фотографию деда за отворот паспорта.
I'm 34. My mother has COVID. I've come to take care of her. We sit in front of the television and listen to Putin. Putin says Russia recognizes the independence of the DNR and the LNR. How long can this tragedy drag on? He wonders. Thank you for your attention. I go out to smoke and quickly buy a washing machine. I think to myself, good thing I've managed to finish renovating my apartment. I think I'm so fucking practical, it's disgusting. The ruble is fucked, I tell Mama. She asks me, what's going to happen? I tell her, they're going to bring troops into Donetsk and Luhansk, but now they will do it officially. More war. Mama says, but at least they'll defend the Russians. Do you know how many Russians live over there? I tell her I have to go back to Moscow. What I mean is I'm going to Donetsk. Mama says, bring the photograph of your grandfather, restore it, and make a big print of it, okay? Okay, I tuck the photograph of my grandfather into my passport.
Я в Москве, сплю, и мне снятся яркие сны. Они слишком яркие, мне почти больно, но как же красиво. Я встаю, иду курить, возвращаюсь в комнату. Моя девушка сидит на кровати с телефоном. Я не могу прочитать выражение ее лица. Ты что, не спишь? Бомбят Киев. Что? Бомбят Киев и все крупные города Украины. Мы бомбим. Мы бомбим.
In Moscow, I sleep and I have very vivid dreams. They're too vivid, it's almost painful, but also so beautiful. I get up and smoke, come back into the room. My girlfriend is sitting up in our bed looking at her phone. I can't read her facial expression. Why aren't you sleeping? They're bombing Kiev. What? They're bombing Kiev and all of the major cities in Ukraine. We're bombing them? We're bombing them.
Я сплю еще 2 часа, заставляю себя спать. Одеваюсь, еду в редакцию. Мне говорят: ты готова? Конечно, готова. На самом деле невозможно подготовиться к тому, что мы фашисты. Я не подготовилась к этому никак.
I sleep for 2 more hours. I make myself sleep. I get dressed and go to the office. They ask, are you ready? Of course I am. But really, it's impossible to be ready for being the fascists. I was not ready for this at all. Thank you for the reading as well.
Thank you for the reading.
So maybe to start our conversation, could you tell us why you decided to write this book at this time? In particular, I'm kind of interested in how you chose the title, like I Love Russia, or Moya Lubimaya Strana in Russian, and kind of how you even chose which reportages or chapters to include. Talk about how the book came into being.
Thank you. I started to think about this book actually in 2015, like many years ago. War on Donbass was already going on, and I already knew that Russian soldiers are participating in that war actively. But what I didn't know, and I wanted to know, where are their relatives, where are their beloved ones? Because I've been told by my colleagues who worked in Chechnya, for example, that during Chechen war, people were trying to drag their beloved one from this war. They were protesting actively, and I was interested to meet families of the soldiers. So I started to look for them, and I found one family who agreed to talk to me. It was a woman. She lived in south of Russia. She worked as saleswoman in the only village shop in her district. And she had younger brother she loved a lot. They were super close, since the childhood. But there is no work for men in this area. So if you're a man and you need a job, you can go up north to work for oil companies, or you can enlist the army and sign the contract. So he enlisted in the army, he signed the contract, and then he was sent to Donbass, and then he died there. So this woman told me how she felt that he died, and how she learned that he died, and how they brought a coffin in the village and forbade her to open it, so she doesn't even 100% sure that this is her brother. And then how she started to ask lots of questions and try to find the truth about why her brother is dead, because we have no war, right? There is no war, so why he's dead? And then she got silent. And I asked her why did she get silent, and she said to me, I had two loves in my life, like my homeland and my brother. My brother is dead. If I could do anything to bring him back to life, I would, but I cannot. He is dead. But if I say that my country is the one to blame for his death, I would lose this love too, and I would be empty inside, and I don't want to be empty inside. I want to love my country. And that was the scariest thing I ever heard. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. I wrote a story, but it felt like it's not enough. It felt like there is much more in that. I started to think how the love to my country, which gives me so much energy, so much strength to work every day as an independent journalist, it makes this woman silent somehow. Same feeling. Why? So I was thinking about it, but you know how it's happening. Like when you're a reporter, you always have some stuff to do. You're never completely free. So I didn't write it, and then Russia invaded Ukraine on full-scale invasion, and I went to report there. And while I was reporting, I didn't have time to think even, because I was very concentrated on like what I see and how I can describe it and how can I prove it and how can I explain Russians what's happening in Ukraine actually. But when I left, I started to listen to myself, and it was a scream in the beginning, and then it was something like questions like how that possible, or how that possible that you, being a reporter for 17 years, haven't seen this war coming. And then I found out that the same love which gave me a lot of, strength to be a reporter, this same love gave me also a hope, and this hope blinded me because I didn't see the future which will come, but I saw the future I want to come. And that's how my love and my hope fooled me, basically. So I understand that now I have to write a book, and basically this book is my attempt to answer how we ended up there, how we became a fascist country, and why we all were so ignorant about it while it was growing inside us, inside our hearts. So that's why I chose this title. I know it might seem controversial nowadays, and not lots of people are ready to admit that they love Russia. And those who say it, like Putin, he says, if you love Russia, go kill Ukrainians, or if you love Russia, obey, or if you love Russia, be silent. But love doesn't demand obedience, silence, murders. It demands very precise look at the thing you love. So I believe nowadays it's very important to understand what are we feeling, not what I be told to feel, but what are we feeling and how these feelings are shaping us.
Thank you. So you kind of write throughout the book about, how you didn't see it, or all these signs of fascism coming. One of the chapters, since you do this through several examples, one of the chapters is focused on this kind of internat or psychoneurological residential centers, let's call them. But just wondering, like, how maybe that specific example of these internat or other state institutions, how they reflect kind of this rise in authoritarianism within Russia, or fascism within Russia, and what does that mean for kind of those who are most vulnerable, like people who are living in these institutions?
Thank you so much for this question. I believe this is the most important thing I ever wrote in my life, this article. But this is not a residential facility. It's like concentration camps for people with psychiatric and neurological diagnosis. It's not like, not all of these people have these conditions, but they all have this diagnosis. And these people are basically sorted out. They live in these kind of facilities. It's like 177,000 of them. 21,000 of them are kids. And they live there without any right to leave this place before they die. They have no human rights. They cannot define every single thing about their own life, like the length of their hair, or what do they want to eat, or do they want to walk or not. They cannot basically walk alone. If they show any signs of not just disobedience, but like bad mood, they can be forcibly medicated, and they wouldn't know what kind of medication was used against them. Women are being sterilized, they're like cats. And before I got in that facility, I prefer not to admit that Russia is a fascist state. But when I got inside it, and like on the third day I realized that I'm basically reporting from the concentration camp, I stopped denying it, at least. But I didn't make the next step. I didn't think that, okay, if we have concentration camps, then we have war in like our porch, obviously. Because like fascism is always about like, it's an extensive ideology. It's about like getting new territories under control, getting new nations under control. So about that facilities, about that people who don't have any human rights and being really tortured and bullied and raped and locked up in that facilities. These facilities were invented by Stalin after Second World War for like veterans who got mad on the war, and he didn't want them to go on the streets because Soviet streets are the most beautiful and clean streets in the world, right? So he built his concentration camps to isolate these people. And though the number of these camps were growing and growing, and now we have the largest number, largest than in Soviet Union, 600 of them. But like, it didn't really change since Soviet time. So if you read like Rubin Gallego book about these places, it's quite the same now. And it makes me wonder, how old is our fascism, actually? Did it started with Putin? Did it started before? Did we have this, sprouts before? And it seems like this system of sorting people into the, and sending them in these places is quite our practice for a long time. And as these people are being denied to be people, as Ukrainians now are being denied to be a nation, so it's all about power and people who have power, who can define someone else's lives and who sort people into like the real people and not real people. So the principle stays the same.
I know in your book you have a specific chapter focused on kind of being a woman or быть женщиной, but throughout the book you have a lot of women characters that appear, and so I just wondered what did these stories tell us about some of the specifics of being women and maybe some gender issues within Russia today?
Well, this is a female book. I believe actually being a woman benefited me a lot, because being a woman in Russia means being vulnerable, and being like lesbian woman being like super vulnerable. And that experience of vulnerability helps me to understand other vulnerable people. And also when you're a woman, you never considered too serious, people don't get frightened. So you can enter places what are locked for men. And despite of we have a patriarchal state in Russia, like the tissue of life is being created and supported by women mostly. Like I believe it's an international thing. So I try to have lots of women in my writing, and trying to make their voice heard. Although sometimes it's really hard to hear what they're saying. I talked with women recruited to sexual work. I spent a week with them. And that's a life full of like endless violence. And though men who were attending with women, they made like very specific, like they try to show up that, okay, you are not a real woman, you're not like a bad one, and there are a good one somewhere else. But the violence against women, like traditional values, which became a traditional violence, it's also quite a long time history in Russia. 80% of female murderers who are in prison basically try to protect themselves from previous violence, try to stop violence against themselves. And we don't have any law protecting women from domestic violence. So this is like all the experience of not being able to protect yourself or feeling yourself constantly lucky because you're not murdered or you're not raped. This is the feeling I believe we all can share. Though it's hard to admit it because, of course, nobody likes to be a victim, nobody likes to admit your own weaknesses.
Thank you. And then another topic that you write about that kind of reflects even your own story and your activism, that is thinking about, can you kind of tell us more about what the situation is like for LGBTQ populations, even since you've written the book, right? We know that even worse things have come.
Yeah, right now it's even worse. Right now is to be LGBTQ person in Russia is to be the part of international extremist movement. So, like, since you are born, you're already part of international extremist movement. It's so cool. Yeah, we have free donuts. Everyone, wanted to be recruited. Please approach me. I'm the representative. So, yeah, it's so cool to be lesbian. Recommended for sure. And you are part of international extremist movement. From 6 to 10 years to prison. It was for transgender people because for them, like, we have no medical or legislative help for these people in Russia. So all surgeries and medical transition is forbidden, and their documents named false documents, and their marriages named their false marriages. And if they have kids adopted from orphanage, these kids have to go back to the orphanage because they are trans people. And there are 650,000 trans people in Russia, and as we know right now, more than 85% of them thinking on suicide. This is the last sociological research we have. It's insane. But not for Putin, because I believe it's all about, bio rights, about if you are feeling that you can send people to war to kill and to be killed, it's strange to wait from your side any kind of respect to, to transgender people to live in their bodies the way they want to, and for LGBT people, for lesbians and gays. So it's all about old, new state control on our bodies. And we also work just perfect as inner enemies, because for good fascism you need not just enemies outside of the country like Ukraine or United States or Europe, but also enemies inside the country. And in that case, we are just perfect because we are everywhere. We look just the same like you guys, but we are so different. And there is like this disturbing number, yeah, like minority, but quite a big minority. Yes, you never know who's gay around you. So we like to play with this paranoia and with traditional values card. But Putin is not unique about it, as I know. So.
Thank you. And then, I was also wondering if you could spend a little bit of time talking. I know this could be a whole lecture on itself, but could you just kind of, in at least, talk about it in your book, but in a few words, talk about like kind of independent journalism in Russia? Like you've been a reporter for 17 years. Like how have you seen it change in your experience? Right, you start the book with all this enthusiasm for becoming a journalist, and then within that, kind of think about the change that's happened. But what does it mean to be an independent journalist now, an independent Russian journalist? And moreover, one outside of Russia?
Well, now it's like a suicide mission. My sister is involved into that. She's part of Novaya Gazeta investigative team, and she lives in Moscow right now. I have deep respect to her work and her decisions, but like I'm endlessly scared every day. And we recently talked, and I asked her about her working plans, and she said that she doesn't understand what I'm asking about. And I'm like, okay, what are you planning? And she's like, we don't plan here anymore. Like, if you have like a day in front of you, you're thinking about how you're gonna spend it, but you never are too sure that you will come back home this day. You never know for 100%. So it's how we live right now, and some of the majority, I would say, Russian independent journalists in Russia are working anonymously, and amongst them there are a lot of young people, like really young people. I mean, like 18, like 19, 20. It's those people who saw that the majority of my generation had to leave. So we just basically entered the profession in the darkest point to keep doing what we did before. And we're trying to help them as much as we can. But I can say that Russian journalism is booming right now, despite of all the catastrophes. But it has a great price which goes with it. And people are willing to pay this price because we have people who want to read the truth. And without those people, we would be useless. But there are these people, so we work for them. And it gives us all a bit hope,
And those are independent Russian or journalists within Russia. How about those like yourself who are like currently outside of Russia? Like what's kind of the role that you all see as the ability to maybe stop
we are
some?
fucked. I mean, especially reporters. Like, I mean, investigative journalists are pretty okay. We just do, unseen things and, with distant, remote investigations. And reporters like me who can basically describe only things what we can see or hear, we are screwed. I mean it. We have a new genre called telephone journalism, when you basically call your character and like, can you describe what you see? And that's not work for me. I mean, I do respect people who do it. It's just a bit another profession. It's like to work with like, it's like all very remote, like COVID, but worse. And it pisses me off, but there are many places which Russia influences and which are abroad, like Ukraine, the most obvious example, but like all post-Soviet space is very affected, and not just post-Soviet space, like Africa, for example, who's right now experienced like a great famine because of the war in Ukraine. And like those places and those people are also deserve our attention. So I try to work on that side right now. But of course, most of all, I want to be in Russia, write about Russia for Russians, like I did before all my life. I'm boring. I don't like changes.
Thank you. I have a lot of other questions, but I also want to give you all an opportunity from the audience if you have some questions that you would like to ask Elena. We have 2 microphones, so if you want to like make cue, you can do that. Can you go to a microphone? You have to go yourself. Self-service. And just say, make sure you say your name and affiliation.
My name is Sarah Ruiz. I'm a PhD student in the Slavic department. First of all, thank you so much for your talk. I'm so excited to go buy your book. It was fascinating. My question is, the chapter that you read from, you open immediately by talking about playing World War II and talking about the Germans and the Great Patriotic War, and that continues throughout that chapter. And you mentioned your grandfather. Can you talk more about how you see like memory or distortion of memory about the Great Patriotic War, how that has kind of worked and is part of the like Putin's regime today?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions. Great one. Great Patriotic War or World War II, like it really affected Russia back then, or Soviet Union back then. Like lots of people died, like every family had someone who participated in the war or who died in this war, who was wounded in this war. Like, so this is like a common catastrophe we survived. And when the veterans of this war, like my grandfather, were alive, the perception of this was, like I said, the great catastrophe we survived. None of the vets wanted to celebrate it, for obvious reasons. And I remember how it was like in our country yard and the apartment building I grew up. Like 9th of May, like you see a lot of old ladies on the benches in the country yard sitting, crying and remembering men who died. And you see this, crying women, and you don't feel like, oh yeah, like such a cool victory. You feel like, oh, we got really lucky. But then Putin started to use this great victory myth for propaganda purposes. And it became more and more mythologized, ritualized, like lots of military parade, lots of like some cultural signs like Georgievskaya lentочка. It's basically how to explain.
Like that orange and black.
It's like, yeah, orange and black cloth of tissue you have to wear these days. So you like showing. Yeah, it's like in the beginning it was about commemorate, but then it was more like showing that you belong to this victory. And then there was become some, fun state-controlled cultures and ideas about like we could repeat it if we don't like how world is changing. So I can say that they use the myth of this war to prepare our mentality, prepare our society to the new war, which obviously was coming. We just were too naive and stupid to see it. Because Soviet culture helped with it a lot, because there were so many propaganda movies made about Second World War. And in those movies, war is a fun thing. Like, yeah, everyone is singing. We're dying, we're screaming, I will live. Yeah, like superheroes, but better, because these superheroes are your actual grandfathers and grandmothers. And then Russia cinema school started to shoot their own movies about Great Patriotic War. And it was like completely Hollywood movies. Like one guy could kill anyone without blink, like very easy, and it all looks like such a wonderful adventure. And people who saw it, especially young generation who didn't participate in Chechen war, for example, well, they believed it pretty much, because it's like how movie works. You see, you think that, oh well, probably that's a good stuff. And because in Russia army is very class determined place, like lots of people who enlisted in the army, it's like people from very depressive regions. Those people were basically told that, you see, there is some business, man business, you can do and be happy and have money and be honored as a hero with like next generations. So then the war on Donbass had happened. We had regular army participating in that, but we also had volunteers, men from poor regions who've been told that there is a lot of sense there, and it's all an adventure, and it's going to be a glorious victory. So we jumped into that. So we see how MIF ended up with real dads. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you very much for your reflection, for your book, and for Elizabeth for providing this second part, like in translation. My name is Ksenia Yortaeva, and I am the fellow of Weizsäcker Center for Europe in Eurasia. I am from Kharkiv, Ukraine. I am associate professor of criminal law and criminology of Kharkiv National University of Internal Affairs. It was very interesting to hear one chapter of your book, and it was full of, was a lot of tragedy on your personal level, on the level of like more people, a lot of disappointment, loss of values, and like despair. I would like to ask, what is the main message of your book? Because we don't have the opportunity to know like the whole book in general. So, because as far as I see right now, it's like a lot of tragedy. And is it like the main topic of the book? And another question I have, because of the title of your book, do you differentiate the love to their state, love to your country, love to their land, and love to your like people? Thank you.
Thank you so much for great questions. I will start with the second, if it's okay. When I say I love Russia, I don't believe it's possible to love state. State is a mechanism for making, like, at least theoretically, our life easier and more organized. But then your state is fucked like Russian one. Like it becomes a mechanism of repression and stealing your life, your money, your future from you. When I say I love Russia, I mean, when I say I love, I mean more feeling of belonging. Like I feel I belong to those people and they belong to me. It's more like you love your leg or you love your arm. You don't feel a lot of excitement about it, right? Like, oh my gosh, I have an arm, I love it. But then it hurts, like it's the only thing what you can think about, right? And right now this love hurts a lot. And when I say Russia, I mean, of course, people united with common destiny. I believe those people united with common destiny is a country, not the state itself. State is a mechanism. And the main idea of the book I wanted to share is to stay alarmed, because it's what I would love to hear like 10 years ago from someone. Stay alarmed, be hysterical if you need to. The country you have, you can lose. It's possible. It's not like to have, you know, sun and air and rain forever. You can lose your country, you can lose your freedoms. And if you feel that darkness is coming, it is coming. and you need to do whatever to protect your future of your kids. I'm sitting here because I lost my country, and I don't want anyone to follow my path. And right now, dangerous things are happening not just in our country, but unfortunately in many other countries. We have tendencies which can lead to some dangerous place and dangerous future for everyone. Even here right now in this university, I've heard there is a discussion about the forms of protest university would love to allow its students and staff. It's never, when they take some freedoms from you, it's never temporary, we always say so. And what we have, we have it because people before us achieved it. And if we are not protecting it, we will lose it. And this is like the main thing I wanted to tell, be alarmed. I hope it works. But I think that we all getting into very dark times, and we have to be aware of it. And of course, I wanted to show how my country is looking like, how it looks like to live in it, and that we do have fascism, because many people are still in denial. We say that we don't, that it's just some kind of very special Russian cultural path. And you can see that it's like very textbook fascism we have, unfortunately. No one is immune. It's another thing. Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions? Oh, so I think. Yeah, go ahead. But I think you have to use the microphone because I don't think everyone can hear. Sorry.
I'm back. I have so many questions, but one that just occurred to me is there can be like criticism of like, oh, that sucks for you, you know, you've lost your country, but like, you know, Ukraine has lost its country in like in such a material way. I wouldn't necessarily like, I believe that it's important for Russians to talk about what's going on.
I believe Ukrainians doing everything not to lose their country.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's the point.
Right, but I guess, could you talk more of like why sort of, why it also matters for Russians to be talking about what's going on? Sorry, and I don't mean this at all in like a combative way. Like but that is something that people do bring up.
Okay, because it's better to learn from someone else's experiences and failures and like catastrophes than to get your own. Basically, I tried to describe every early sign of fascism I could find, so you would be prepared. But also because you can see that it was growing slowly. It hadn't started like 24 of February in 2022. It started way before. And the same crime Russia is doing against Ukrainian people, it was doing in Chechnya and in Syria and in Georgia. And human rights violations are always happening for like quite a decades. And the impunity of it led to the opportunity for Putin to start this war and think about like other new wars. I believe he is planning new things for sure. So I believe it's important to see how it works, but I also believe it's just kind of fascinating to read stories from so-called usual Russians, where I believe there is no usual people at all. Because to understand them and to understand what are they scared and what are we dreaming about, it's probably more important than to understand what Putin's dreams about, because though he wants to present Russia himself, in the end of the day, he's just one of 150 millions of other people. I don't believe that journalism is a fourth power, at least not in Russia, never been. But I believe that journalism creates these kind of invisible connections between people. And those invisible connections are actually the thing what keeps the world together. So probably then you read some stories of patients of these facilities called PNI, or with sex workers involved into prostitution, or LGBTQ people being murdered in Russia, or Ukrainian people being killed by Russian soldiers. I mean, that creates connections. And I believe that it might help us all, but probably it won't.
Well, and just to kind of follow up to Sarah's question, like we ended, that chapter, the reading part of the section of the chapter, right? The introduction of section of the chapter, and then it follows with your reportings from Mykolaiv in those first days of 2022. And I just wondered, like, it ends with you setting off to Ukraine, and what was your, like, I guess, kind of mission, or what was the importance of you as a Russian reporter going to Ukraine at that time? What were you hoping to achieve with that?
Well, I'm a war correspondent, so I was sent there as a war correspondent. And basically we had a huge line of correspondents who wanted to do the same. They just picked up me because I'm more experienced. But basically you don't have a choice in that situation. If your country invades into other country and try to kill people there, you need to know exactly what's happening and what is being done by your name and name of your citizens in Ukraine. So I came there. I was very lucky to cross the border because, of course, the moment war had started, it became impossible the official crossing the border for Russian citizens. So my newspaper were in touch with Zelensky office, presidential office, and they made an exception for me, and I'm endlessly grateful for that. And then I worked in south of Ukraine, in Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kherson, and also on the Ukrainian-Polish border, during on the people trying to flee away from the war. And what I did there, first it was possible only because Ukrainian people were helping me all the way along. And they were helping me not because they liked me too much, but because they wanted to address Russian people through me. They wanted to explain what is really happening. And though bombs were already falling, we still believed in us that we can, revolt and we can stop this war. And this kind of belief and this kind of trust in us while we were killing them already, I will never forget. I was lucky to report on Kherson, then it was under the occupation. And I crossed front line twice when I was moving in and moving out. And people who helped me to do it, we did it understanding that it can be the end of their life, but we did it anyway. I will never forget it too.
Good evening. My name is Katrina Sirenyok-Dolgaryova. I am from Zaporizhia National University, Ukraine, and I am Vice Center for European Eurasia Fellow here at University of Michigan. Thank you, Elena, for your presentation today and for important topics you're talking today about. And my question is about Russians, of course. You mentioned that you're writing for Russian people, for Russian audience that who still wants to hear truth, and they are your audience. Do you believe they can form maybe a core of the dissident movements inside Russia that we've seen, of course, in history before in Soviet Union, the opposition, some kind of opposition that can grow? We've seen some signs of that after the death of Navalny, how people gathered at his grave, So we are really eager to hear your opinion on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. I know that in Russia there are a lot of grassroots movements right now. People who are against the war, they unite with each other. Most of these movements are unpublic. They don't have any public presence for obvious reasons, because we have enormous level of repression which can be compared only to Soviet times, not to modern Russia days. And those movements are doing very different things, from fighting with propaganda to blowing up the rail tracks so train wouldn't deliver weapons to Ukraine. I'm collaborating with some of them who are helping Russians and Ukrainians to leave Russia if we need to do it safely without getting our special security services involved. And obviously these movements and other movements, and I would love to mention the anti-war resistance, female anti-war resistance, which is made by very different women all around Russia and outside of Russia as well. As I see it right now, all these movements trying to build a chain of trust, because right now on this level of repression people don't really trust each other, they don't talk with each other. And then Navalny was murdered and people went to his cemetery to cover his grave with flowers. And later then they went to vote on the elections. It was, for many people who I talked with, it was about seeing each other's faces and getting a feeling that they can trust someone else. And those trust is necessary for future changes, because honestly, the only chance we have is a revolution. And this revolution can be done only inside of Russia by Russians. And that's why it's so essential to keep informing those people to do our work. But in the matter of our work, it looks like a technological race, because government tried to block us on our newspapers, our articles, our applications. They are experimenting right now to block the whole VPN protocol in Russia. And so far, we kind of winning because we know how to avoid these blockages, but we're winning in some, to some extent, because lots of people in Russia, they are technically illiterate, like my mom, who are physically impossible for her to turn on VPN on her phone by herself. But we still can reach them through YouTube, for example. And I'm afraid what our state will do next is they would accept the law with criminalization of content consuming, like in Belarus. Like then you would be punished not for spreading information, but for reading wrong information. And that challenge, I don't know how to face. So if that's gonna happen, I don't know what we're gonna do about it. Because right now we have some ideas how to protect our readers and how to build like a safe bridge for sharing the information with them. But it works for now, but would it work like in a half a year? We don't know. But I believe, yes, information is essential for people who are making decisions and who are having active position in Russia right now.
All right. Well, we're about time to wrap up our evening event and our conversation with Elena Kostuchenko. So I'll take this opportunity for everyone to thank you for joining us. And if you would like to get a copy of the book, but also to have Elena sign it as well, that would be great. So thank you all for turning out and have a good evening.
Thank you so much.